Hi, everyone, and welcome to the experience. And you may recognize this familiar face, this beautiful face. And I wish I could wear that color blue. It makes me look like a dead person. So it's so beautiful to see it so glorious on you. Cynthia Sue Larson. And this show is going to be really exciting. Well, first of all, welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Nora.
And go ahead.
I just always love being with you. I love your energy, love the brightness you bring to everything without any fear whatsoever of looking into the chaos. So I love that.
Likewise, my dear friend. I think it's a perfect time to kind of launch into conversations about that. I want to talk about how you in particular are navigating these times and what you're seeing. I mean, you're doing some amazing, very cool work, in my opinion, with the Mandela Effect Conference. And that's gotta immerse you into some pretty interesting realms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, the folks that I'm partnered with, that's Shane Robinson from Unbiased and on the Fence. And then the gentleman who started the whole thing, Jerry Hicks, the Dark Wolf, and then the quantum businessman, Christopher Anatra. The four of us are the intrepid explorers that bring together the International Mandela Effect Conference each month. And we do it as a live stream, and we bring in guests. We bring in scientists. We'll have a scientist coming in this month I hope that this isn't, I don't know when you're going to post this video.
Right away. I'm posting it right away. Yeah, today. Okay, cool. No, it's going to be good timing.
Yay. Okay. Yeah, because we usually broadcast live the last Wednesday of every month. And that's pretty much what we're doing this month. And we'll have a professor, Donald Hoffman, who's really brilliant, talking about this idea that everything is basically simulated. And he's not making this up or just speculating, or he's not microdosing something and having these vivid dreams. No, he's a very down to earth.
That's more what I would be doing. Well, no, I think that's a really valid point, Cynthia, because that's what I just watched the first one 2 months ago. I unfortunately had to miss the last one, but I am not going to miss anymore, because those conferences are not just thrown together. There is so much love and attention and intention put into these conferences. It's pretty amazing, the depth and breadth of what you all cover. And so bravo to you. It's a wonderful conference, and I want people to watch it. It is very cool. It's so cool, the stuff that you guys talk about, and all of your different personalities it's such a perfect harmony.
I know we're so different, but we all come together. And thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And then of course the community, and then we've usually got a guest. So there's 6 components to the whole thing. In the chat, the live stream is really lively. People come in and they say hi, and share their questions and comments. And some of it just stays in the chat. Some of it bubbles up and gets into the conversation with our guests. So it's all great. Thank you.
I know that from personal experience. I was chatting with you in real time when I was on. It was super cool.
Yay. Yeah, it is super cool. So what we're doing, the under the radar part of it, is that we are basically aware that the Mandela effect is literally changing the world. Our take on it is clearly not that it's some kind of confabulation or misremembering or some sort of an error in the way our brains work. Instead, we're actually recognizing, what if all of reality is like a simulation? What if we can access this deeper level of consciousness that we all have access to? And through doing that, witness collective changes in all of reality. That's exactly what we're talking about. And that's what we're doing, bringing in my favorite question, how good can it get? And then we've got our own guiding visionary statement, which is together we go, together we grow. And it's really a collective. So that's what we're doing with IMEC. And like I said, Donald Hoffman will be with us in May. And if you missed the live, you can always go and catch it later.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I got to see it. I got to catch up.
Yeah.
What that brings up for me is to me, just hearing this unified effort of working with the collective consciousness in a way that feels very empowering. And, I think people who already understand how this works, people in power may have already known for a really long time and have utilized it, wielded it to their benefit and what you're offering. And I think people who are in, I would say, like-minded spheres of maybe the wellness communities, et cetera, empowering communities, are intentionally sort of bringing it sort of like no holds bar, like things are starting to like get much more, like people are getting, I guess, more courageous about it and just saying, no, we actually have an opportunity to change things. We can do this. And then having people like you and the conference demonstrating it in like, this is how you do it, and such cool people too. It's so powerful.
Oh, it's totally powerful. And thank you for saying that too. And with our guests, each one of them is completely different. They're not, month to month is like a whole different thing, but there's a unifying, concerted feeling that I think people can really touch and tap into and benefit from, which is very uplifting. It's ultimately extremely uplifting in this great time of darkness, chaos. Some people feel a little bit lost right now, and there's just so much changing that it's a little crazy, and maybe not in ways people expected. Like people do one thing, they expect a certain result. Nothing's quite going to plan anywhere. And
yes,
that's okay. And so we're part of this stabilizing force in a time of great change, where we can basically say, we already know it's changing. So let's harness this kind of quantum uncertainty, if you will, and find this beautiful order that's coming out of the chaos. And that's what we're doing.
So well said. So let's talk about that. I think it's a really interesting sort of point to hone in on and grapple with, because I know in my work, I see it in my own life. I see it around me, that what did work in the past is no longer working in the same way. And, you and I have been cultivating these tools, well, you even longer than me. And people who don't have tools at all I think are the ones that are really struggling right now, because it's like, WTF, what's happening? Like it's a true sort of catastrophic shift from understanding what's happening. And that can be incredibly scary for people. And so what you're talking about, and what I absolutely am wholeheartedly in agreement with, is how do we recognize that something is, like, first of all, just acknowledge, yes, something is happening, and that there's something that we can do about it, that we don't have to go down the tubes, we don't have to go down, to hell in a handbasket and just lose it and totally lose sense of who we are, what we're doing. There's so much more that we can pay attention to. So I'm curious to hear your point of view on that.
My underlying philosophy is that whatever things may look like, that's not the fullness of what they are. And furthermore, just because they look a certain way doesn't mean that they can't change. And sometimes they can change in beneficial ways. So just because it looks like things are stuck, like the story's not over. So I would always recommend that people recognize that you can do a very simple technique, just journaling about your own day. Write about yourself in the third person, gain that extra level of dimensional awareness of yourself, so that you are the one. Like I'd be saying, Cynthia was talking with Nora about chaos and darkness. And so I'd be writing about myself that way, Cynthia. And as soon as I start writing things like, today, Cynthia knows that what she most needs is, as soon as I start putting it that way, I'm automatically rising above some of that drama, some of the emotions that can seem kind of dark. And there can be a joy in that moment, even if it is very dark. And I've been through some really dark times with that long COVID experience I went through. which is, I'm only
How are
about
you feeling?
fantastic and just getting better
Awesome.
all the time. I know.
You're very
So
bright and shiny.
thank you. Yeah, but it's about a year later. And so I'm noticing that there's still a return to some of my vocabulary coming back, some of my
Wow.
joint issues still clearing up. So it was a system-wide attack on my body. I know there are people that just want to deny the whole thing. And that's one approach.
Oh, not me.
Yeah, well, I think you and I share this quality, like, let's just embrace the fullness of what is and be
Yeah.
here. Really, and that's perfect for quantum jumping. When you're really accepting and you're in that state of neutrality, you're not judging it. It's just like, well, this is what it looks like. But
Mhm.
remember, just because it looks like something doesn't mean it has to stay stuck there. So
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
like the key.
Well, and you went through the experience of COVID. I don't know if I should be mentioning it, but I also I had I got 2 of the jabs and was very intentional about it, not in the way that I think most people were. I felt into it and was like, I was a no for a long, long time. And my husband is like, absolutely no. And he was working from home. And so I was exploring. I'm sort of one of those people that's like, what do I want my experience to be? Do I want my experience to be of this or of that? And at some point, it dropped in that my experience was it was going to be okay if I did go ahead and get it. And I have had noteworthy complications happening that I agreed to participate in. And so it's it's just an interesting, I mean, I look at it from in the same way that I think you do is I
Right.
have the non-human self, and then the human self is
Right.
grappling with the sort of biological dynamics that are playing out. And it's also confusing because my body isn't acting in the way that I'm totally familiar with. And I have a great practice of noticing sensations and being with it and asking, what does it need? So if my heart is going into a flutter, or if I'm feeling nerve pain, or if I have a spontaneous outbreak of shingles on my neck, I have, it's a new experience for me to have it without previous warning signs, I guess
Right.
is how I would put it. And so it's been the source of a lot of mental gymnastics, mental emotional gymnastics. But I think it's important for me. I think part of the reason of choosing to have it, I think my soul wanted to have the experience of knowing what other people were going through.
Exactly.
And I'm also not afraid of not being here. I want to be here. I want to be with my kids as they grow up and with my partner. But I also am not afraid.
Well, I did a wonderful video with Shane Robinson, who's one of those other 3 people I mentioned, who's part of
Yes.
IMEC, yes. And he and I was talking with him, and he was concerned because he, like I do, we both know people who've had the medical procedure. And
That's a great way of putting it, medical procedure.
and I had not, but I was one of the the gangsters, the original gangsters, the OG from January 2020. So I came down.
That's when you came down with it.
Yeah, I got the OG version. And so I came down with that in January 2020. My long COVID started in February, and I was like, what the heck is going on? And then it just got weirder. So the video that I did with Shane, we'd had a series of conversations actually. And eventually we just said, we should do this video, because what I got a chance to do is talk about what's going on in China. Now, China is a very different place than most of us in the West, in Europe, in America, Canada. And so a lot of us don't have connections there, but it's interesting because they're doing some really wacky stuff. In year 3 of this pandemic, they are doing a massive lockdown with lots of theatrics. basically flamethrowers and like cleansing and decontamination, like off the hook, crazy looking. Like this,
Wow.
like, is this a Hollywood production? No. And then they're locking people into their homes.
Maybe it's
just,
got to look good. It's got to look really good, right? Like we're really making an effort here.
but they're doing it for their own people to see we mean it. This is serious.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So it's a very heavy duty, very oppressive message.
Like a control
Yeah.
mechanism.
Yeah. And then so you notice they're doing zero tolerance of something. Of what? Ostensibly it looks like the virus. Okay. Well, anyway, next thing that they're doing is their own little medical procedure is very differently formulated than the West's. It's totally different. It does not contribute. Yeah. There's something that it does differently, which it does not encourage in any way, shape, or form the spike protein at all.
Oh.
And the third thing they're doing that's interesting is they're providing treatments and doing lots of research to develop something called anti-amyloids. What are those? An amyloid is something the spike protein creates. So that would contribute to blood clotting, just flare-ups of all sorts of things. Could be cancer, aggressive cancer could start. A lot of the things you might have heard about, neuropathies, nervous system disorders, breakdowns of just about every organ, flutters in the heart.
So that's what they've created are encouraging that?
They're creating a treatment. They're creating anti-amyloids, which we don't even hear about this. We don't hear about spike protein. We don't have a zero tolerance on spike. So if now China doesn't say what they're doing, but if we step back and we wonder, well, what are they doing? Let's review the facts again. Massive zero tolerance, locking people in their homes. Zero tolerance of what? Well, you could say maybe it's COVID, but what if it's the spike protein? And then secondly, it starts looking a lot like that when you notice that they're creating these treatments for anti-amyloids, which is what happens if spike protein invades a person and starts creating blood clots, heart problems and so forth. Yes. Wow. And so they're basically doing a different kind of treatment. And they're also doing a different kind of, let's see, I'm just getting, I just saw a bandwidth message pop up, like, okay.
Oh,
but then it came back.
Oh, you did. I disappeared for a second.
Well, you got really small and now you're back.
Did I?
It's okay.
Sorry,
I take these things.
My energy was big in here. I think
Blew
it's recording that,
slightly.
and I don't think there was anything that phased out on this end, but I think that's interesting timing. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the three things again, just to review, would be, their own medical procedures are not designated or designed in any way, shape, or form to encourage the spike protein. They're creating treatments that are to address what looks like after you've been exposed to a spike protein. You could be getting amyloids, which could contribute to arthritis and tremors and heart flutters and organ breakdowns and stroke and all these things, and aggressive cancer even. So all of that they're treating. And so Shane and I did this video talking about this, and then I shared some of the amazing things that I've learned. I think the reason I got long COVID, people ask me, why did you get it? That was so I could come back out of it. And so I could be one of the first people to get in it, come back out of it, and then have with me this huge, wonderful tool bag of, look at this. These are anti-amyloids. Two things people can do for free right now. Just increase the spacing between your meals. It's called intermittent fasting. And if you do that, your body takes out the trash, it takes out these amyloids that build up. So there's a natural process where our bodies dump this out. But if you give it a 16-hour just drinking water and nothing else besides water for 16 hours, and then you return to your regular drinks and beverages and foods for the other 8 hours of eating, then you're getting your digestive system to join in this program. And then increasing your sleep. Sleep is another time we clear out the amyloid mess, the junk, the garbage. And then there's some foods you can take or supplements, and the ones I really recommend are quercetin, resveratrol, and curcumin. Those three are super anti-amyloids. And so this is good for everybody. I just give this a recommendation unless there's some reason not to take this. I would recommend everybody do these 5 things, sleep, eat, take curcumin, resveratrol. and
Yeah.
once a
Okay.
time.
I love it. I love it. And we have those. And intermittent fasting, I kind of like it. It's mentally strengthening as well, because, I work with people sometimes on their relationship with food. And oftentimes, and
Yeah.
I'm human too. I have my relationship with food, and having just a time where there's just no food.
Yes.
And I haven't, I've been drinking beverages, but I haven't eaten since yesterday, it's a long time ago, but I drink coffee or I drink tea. So I haven't added the component of just water, which would be probably super amazing.
It is. And it's okay to do electrolytes. I put a little like Himalayan salt in the water, or you can buy like an electrolyte mix. And what that does is for me, it takes all the food cravings away. So if I'm in hour 14, like just 2 more hours, and I just take a few sips of this electrolyte water, I'm like, I'm good to go. Feel great.
Awesome. Great tip.
And the reason that these are so important now for everybody is because it looks like the containment strategies, which are all very different worldwide, don't seem, it's like it's a big mess. There's a lot of chaos. So it doesn't really matter which opinion you're going for. You can just ask people, how's it going? And it's a big mess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think of it from the perspective of the human psyche, and how people are coping with such tremendous loss of familiarity, just one thing after the other, looking bizarre, looking like this is reality now. And so what's so cool is how you work with really viewing and interpreting reality. I think is such an empowering lens for people. And so let's talk about how you recommend working. I'm going to have that link with your video with Shane. Definitely put it in the description box. But let's talk about that. When we're working with a reality that is a simulation, help people who don't quite get what you mean by that and how to navigate that to their benefit. What's that like?
Well, for people that are new to the concept, when I started writing about it, I was describing reality shifts, which most people know when you do laundry and those mismatched socks come out, and it just seems like this is crazy. But most people don't really seriously entertain the idea that items are literally vanishing, teleporting, appearing, disappearing. And I was early on saying, oh, yes, they are. And writing about Larry Hagman, the actor, being alive again. And now we've got
I feel like there was an actor that I feel like I had a Mandela effect. Well, they see, the more I connect with it, the more I see them happening. But I can't think of the one that I just recently connected with. But sorry to interrupt.
So
go ahead.
You saw someone that was dead and then they're back again?
Yeah, I definitely had that happen with Kirk Douglas.
Oh yeah, that was a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, I watched his funeral, and then he was still alive, and then he was like 100, and I'm just like, but he died.
I know. Yeah, right. I saw that too. Yeah. And so they call it the Mandela effect for Nelson Mandela, for people that haven't heard about that. So people that are just feeling like that's wacky sounding, and I'm not sure that these things happen to me. So if they're at that place, then just entertain the idea. Just consider maybe it's possible. I love to add the question, how good can it get? Because then you're just putting the perfect spice on it so that when it happens for you, it'll be super cool. Like you'll have extra money in your wallet. You'll find something that you didn't think that you'd ever find again. And there's no way you could find it because it was lost decades ago. It's like grandma's wedding ring and there it is. And there's no reason it should be there, but it is, that kind of thing.
And like you're talking about the intention, the literal setting of intention for how good it can get. So stating, yes, I want to think about this in the context of like, this is happening now, but I want to juice the idea. how good can it get in any situation? So
Right.
then applying that on top, another like yummy layer of the sandwich onto Mandela effect,
Oh
like
yeah.
like when this happens, I want it to be really how what might that be like? What would be as how good could it get? Like how I could get, you know, a download of $1 million, or I could run into a best friend at a, you know, wherever. How do you do it? I want to hear some of your thoughts about how you think about it.
Well, I just put out how good can it get, and then I get just a random smorgasbord of all kinds of cool stuff. Like, and for me, that's fun. So,
Yeah,
and it's not so much. You think money is going to be the greatest thing, but it isn't really what makes people happy. Usually,
that's true.
it's more connections. It's people that we care about, or just for me, going in the garden and there's a blue jay that now comes and I was surprised when I was out there watering with a hose and he landed in on the lawn next to me, like 20 feet away.
Oh, I
Now he
love
just
blue jays.
now he flies in really close, like 8 feet to 6 feet away on a
Wow.
branch at my eye level, looking at me, and I'm out there with a hose. But
That's how good it can get. I see
yeah,
what you're saying.
for me
And
that's super cool. Yeah.
that is super cool. I would totally agree with that. So when we take the events of what people are seeing, I mean, I don't watch the news. I'm sort of insulated in my life, you know, just really staying focused on my family and keeping my vibration high, and my clients. And so, but I don't advocate doing that. I think people are going to do what they feel compelled to do. And so using your special way of viewing reality that's empowering, what do you recommend to people that are
Well,
wanting to try something new?
I like what you were touching on earlier, that you check on yourself and you're very self-aware. And I think that's the key. So really getting to that place. And if people don't do that, then they should work with someone to help get there. Like you are good at work, you can work with people. I work with people. So both of us do that so we can work with people and help them start noticing like, oh, that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah,
And
people can work with you, Cynthia, like that. Some people might not really understand that you work with people one-on-one.
I
That's
do.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I help people gain that connection and sense of trusting what they're feeling and learning to check in pretty regularly. That's the key to quantum jumping, is to be okay with whatever seems to be happening instead of pushing it away, clenching up, getting tight, getting these just weird areas in our energy body. Because
Mhm.
if we get those little kinks in the
The
hose,
roadblocks.
oh yeah, then it can create it creates chaos and clutter in the outside world. It really does. And it's something people can play with and practice just as they start getting clear, meditating and getting grounded, just breathing deeply, recognizing that you can just let your tummy relax and start feeling good in that lower area of your body. Because we've got neurons there too. You've got like your belly brain, your heart brain, and then your brain. And each of those centers is just a real beautiful constellation of neurons and patterns. And so when you start noticing what your patterns are, like you work with people to do this too, clear the patterns. And
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
starts with observing it, just really noticing. And that's the
So
reason it's
true.
so important, is because then when I'm looking at something, like I do watch the news just to see what's going on. And partly because I realize we're part of a collective, we can steer things together. So for me, it's important to take a look at something, but not so long that I get sucked into the drama and start believing it, which
Yeah.
means if I start thinking that's realer than the true reality, then I'm off course. And then I get really cool Mandela effects. I mean, really cool ones that show me like get back on track. I had one with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
did you? Oh,
I mean,
yeah. I mean,
I
there's
get
so many directions I want to go, but
I
I'm
get
gonna
weird
bite my
stuff.
lip.
Yeah. So I'm
Matthew
not gonna,
McConaughey, how cool. Yeah.
I
What's
know.
up with that?
He's like, all right, guy. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, what happened is I was just thinking before I did that video with Shane, I'm like, this is gonna be a little dark. We're looking at China, we're looking at crazy stuff. people may take it the wrong way, and we run that risk. But it was more important that we get the information out there. And I was
Good.
concerned.
Good for
I was
you.
actually, I was being a little like, ooh, should I, how much should I say and all that. So then around that time, as I was getting ready for that, just, when you're doing something on the internet, you just see these news stories popping up. I saw these news stories start popping up. Matthew McConaughey injured with a mirror. And I'm like, injured with a mirror? What? And I see, this is like, I know, it's like 3 different stories. And it's like he hit his head on a mirror.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And this is like, it now, thank goodness it didn't happen, and knock wood,
Oh, okay.
So, but here's what
You
happened.
shifted. Yeah.
Well, first I saw 3 reputable news stories full of details, and they were matching. It's like each one a little different. They weren't all carbon copies, but they all had mostly the same thing. He was on location.
It's like soft reality.
Yeah, well, it
hadn't dropped in.
Looked real to me, and I just said, I'm going to look at this later. Don't have time right now. Oh my gosh. And so I went back to researching all this stuff, like what's going on with COVID itself, and the scientists who are working to combat it, and all the different opinions about all that, and how some of the solutions are worse than the original problem, all that. I was down all those trails, came back, and then I'm looking at, I know.
Come on back, honey, come on back.
And I'm checking, like, how's Matthew? So I checked on him. He's fine. He's celebrating some anniversary with his wife. No mention of anything about a mirror. I'm like, that is so weird. So I mentioned it to a friend, like a few days later, I think 3-4 days later, and I tell her about it. And she says, I just did a Google search, and guess what, Cynthia? I'm like, what? She said, he just did this little short video with Drew Barrymore on, if you want collective change, look in the mirror.
Oh,
and it was like
whoa.
it's a 1 minute, it's like this little 1 minute video. I'm like, you got to be kidding. I'm like, no, not kidding. And it's about collective change. And it's the whole thing about looking in a mirror. So it went from, he had an accident that never occurred. That's the kind of weird stuff I get, but it's good, because then I get this image of, I can just feel like Matthew's right there in front of me saying, like, Cynthia, so you're telling me you can change some of these things. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, better get busy, better do that. Better do that thing you do. I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you, Matthew. So that's how I took it.
So it's so cool. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. So it was very personal. It's not like, thank God not everybody saw that. I was like, what the heck? I don't want anything bad happening.
Well, I think
but then I get this huge message, and it was meta message on so many levels. And he's even talking about collective change.
Well, I think what you do is, because you were born doing this. I mean, you've been a highly sensitive person your whole life. And I think, sort of to backtrack first before I sort of fold back into what we're talking about, is, what we're training our one-on-one clients or our group clients to do is to become more sensitive, not to become less sensitive, but to become more sensitive to themselves and the feedback and data that's flowing through them at every moment of every, moment of existence, and that they can always tune in and like ping, like, what's happening, what's going on inside me. I can tune into the sensations of my body and figure out, like, where the flow is, where my thoughts are, how it's showing up. And you're talking on a level that is so refined that it is observable through your reality, and it's observable through all of our realities.
That's right.
However, this is how I see it in my sort of, through my lens, which is, we haven't learned to sort of dial back on how things are unfolding. We're so trained to look from a reactionary point of view, to sort of look back on things like, oh, that happened, now I have to respond. What you're talking about is backtracking, reeling it back to where we're like in the flow at the moment with our thoughts, and aligned in this sort of like, like Neo in the Matrix reality. And then we can see it playing out in this way, and we won't miss it. But if we're focused, and it's almost like you've already, like, if you're noticing it in a reactive way, not you per se, but us, if we're noticing it in reaction, It's gone. Like our ability to create a different outcome has already come and gone because we're not present with how our reality is unfolding, I guess is the way of saying it.
Yeah, get
So,
caught up in that drama. And it is a participatory universe. That's what
yes.
physicist John Archibald Wheeler said. It's a participatory universe. That
Yeah.
means what you're thinking, what you're feeling, there's going to be feedback directly to that. You are the observer and you do change what you are observing. Absolutely. Every time. And you're right. There's a beauty to it because when you know that's happening, then you get that opportunity not to be that victim. In that moment, you can rise above. You can speak as your higher level self, even when you don't know why. You're being the courageous hero or heroine, and you're saying, don't worry about this, it's going to be all right. Just like Matthew McConaughey, all right, all right, all right.
Well, and I think
right.
we've talked about this before, but I think it's a really great time to bring it up again is the difference between feeling like a victim of your life and in that reactionary sort of place where things keep happening to me, and it's like it's this feeling of being attacked all the time that people, I've heard people feel that way. I've seen it. There's a lot of blame. When people are in a place of blame, they feel like victims. And so this, and I want to hear more about like how the simulation, because I don't know, I've always seen it through more of a law of attraction lens, but seeing it in terms of a simulation, what comes to mind for me is video game. And I actually tell my son who's, both of my sons are like huge video gamers, but it's like, how can you shift when I'm trying to tell them about how to navigate and create a better reality for themselves? What like you know how to strategically work your game so that you can level up in your game. Like, what if this is a version of the same thing?
It is in the sense that there's the character me, the physical body, and the character you, and then there's the real player, Cynthia, my consciousness, my infinite eternal consciousness, the one that can say Cynthia right now is feeling excited because she's talking to Nora, having fun, and so there's like the player level, and then there's the character. And so if we're in the drama, we're the character, and that's how you know instantly. If you need to start developing sensitivity so that you're aware, like, oh, I'm feeling terrified, like, okay, you're the character. Or I'm feeling angry, you're the character. And it's like, oh, so I need to level up to that, be the player.
Step out. I like you hear the term, and I think I'm just sort of like feeling compelled to remind people that we have these terms that we use and that you hear in the collective already that are referring to this, which is like, the 35,000 foot view or the bird's eye view, or take a step back, get some objectivity from the self, from the character, from the avatar or whatever. And then you're in that space of the infinite, self, the higher self.
Yeah, we call it ego too. And for me, ego is like mid-self. It's like, it should be the heart consciousness, the heart brain. So for me, it's like the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, it's the mid-range. But if you just kind of rise up to this level of third eye or crown center, or some people go above that, then you can start kind of looking down, like you're just viewing your life like you're a character, like, oh, and you can feel love for yourself and feel all sorts of empathy for yourself, like, Cynthia is feeling worried or afraid about this because it looks like a real thing. But when you're in that higher level consciousness, those things don't look real anymore. And that's the key, is through meditation, through prayer, through these different practices. Or like you work with clients and you're doing hypnotherapy, all of these different methods can help people get to that awareness.
And the ultimate result is relief, ultimately freedom and relief. Like, you get to be away from that suffering, that feeling of angst and worry, and that that feeling of drama and chaos playing out in our lives. And I think it's such a great time to double down on an approach that is helpful in that way, because we do change the collective in that way. And I'm curious, I don't know how many people are choosing to work with their consciousness versus ones that aren't, like in an intentional way. But I'm wondering if you have been seeing in your work with the Mandela Effect conference and hanging out with the gang, evidence of people as a collective changing reality.
Oh, yes. We do see that in our group, because I think some of the fun stuff that's happened would be like Christopher Anatra. He has his Quantum Businessman channel, and he's
Such a great name.
Yeah, he's talked about some stuff like the dodo bird being extinct. And we talk about extinct animals that we start each show with our sponsors. Usually those are Lazarus species. These are generally acknowledged animals and plants that used to be extinct and now they're back. And it is a thing, and even scientists have a name for it because it happens with rather startling frequency. So it's not some aberrant, strange thing that never happens. It happens so often. We start every month's show with it, usually.
That's funny. I didn't know that. The dodo bird. I remember when the dodo bird was extinct.
Yeah, well, it still is, but I'm going to credit Christopher Anatra because he was starting to really look at that. He's also looking at the white rhinoceros and some other species that aren't yet returned. But then we start seeing movement happening, like the closest relative to the dodo bird would be pigeons, and like the passenger pigeon went extinct. And so we're noticing timeline changes where now Christopher and I and Jerry and Shane don't remember that we have now, I think, 2 pretty intact dodo bird bodies. Many of us remember
like
there used to be a time. These were like dead example dodo birds that someone had saved. Now there was, previously it was just like a part of one maybe that was kind of
interesting. Like it's sort of coalescing back into reality.
We're seeing history changing, and we're getting more and more it's like more and more solid, more recently fully available full dodo bird that we don't remember having access to before. So we're seeing movement happening. And then, it'd be cool if the dodo bird came back and all of that. So that's the kind of collective fun that we have. Some of the big changes that are very positive for humanity involve changes to our physiology and our anatomy. Some of the anatomy changes are just weird, like there are little holes in the skull. I'm not sure what that's about, but the good ones would be the kidneys moving up under the rib cage, so they're more
that makes perfect sense. Yeah, you've been following that one for a long time.
So there's been lots of stuff going on that are good. So what we're doing collectively is just talking to experts so people can activate our left brains and kind of think about it like, oh, this makes sense why we would be seeing the Mandela effect. We can expect that together we can change reality. And what my whole point with you today, that when I did a meditation before this, like, what's the big point? The big idea is really about order out of chaos, and that this happens, and it happens with, this is something that's provable within quantum physics. You can look at how they're looking for amazingly, it's just like a patterned solid walk right out of a puzzle, coming from pre-existing quantum patterns in the chaotic foam. It's like quantum waves. And right now, this year 2022, we're in this thickness of so much chaos, so much darkness, so much change. And people might think like, well, this is only going to get bad. How could this possibly go well? And what we're here to remind them is to keep asking, how good can it get? Have complete confidence that there are enough of us holding fast and firm to that vision of peace and love and balance and harmony and relationship, all the good things.
Unity, not division.
Yeah, things that we love. So we can feel that is there, and that will guide us right out of that chaos. It'll look like it's organized. It'll look like we did it together. We are doing it together.
I
Doing it
love
together by
Mhm.
independently holding fast to this vision that this will happen.
So I think what I hear you saying too is even it in manifestation of, creating our reality, there is this strong component of trust and faith that must happen. And in some areas, we find it effortlessly. Like we expect that we're going to breathe the air. We expect that water is going to come out of our faucet. Most of us, many of us, we expect that the road is going to be there as we drive on it. So we have faith in these things to the point where we just trust that they're already there. But bringing reality, a new reality into play it's a deep trust exercise.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why it helps to start with the little things like the socks in the laundry, or noticing your keys or your wallet or your phone. It's like it moves around on its own. Start opening to the idea that maybe that is actually happening, because that's what we're saying is, yes, that's happening. Happens to me a lot. I think
yes, it does. It was
these.
in Quantum Jumps. I don't know if I told you this, but actually I had just read Quantum Jumps, and a woman called me to have a session, and she said, I need you to regress me to to the time when I lost my what do you call it? Engagement ring. And I said, okay, I could do that, but first try this. And I said, just let go of any fear, let go of any like anxiety that you're not going to find it, and just absolutely trust that you're going to find it. And we'll wait a few days, but if you don't find it, then call me back and I'll regress you to that point. And a few days pass. She's like, okay, I could do that. And I'm like, well, it'll save you some money. And she didn't call me back. And I was like, I got to know. And so I called her back, and sure enough, she had gone to her dresser and she had obviously looked forever it had been gone for years. And,
Right.
and like on top of her, like lingerie, like boop, right there was her engagement ring. And she's like, oh yeah, like it was so seamless to her, even though it was a miraculous occurrence. She's
Right.
like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that it happened. I have it. I'm wearing it. Thank you. I'm like, thanks, Cynthia.
I love it. That is so cool.
Yeah.
And it can be just that easy. It's like just recognizing. I love how you start, just let go of all that fear. And that gets back to that gut and that clenching sensation and this chaos and darkness that so many people are feeling right now. But that's the key for all of us. Let go of that fear and just know we've got this. And things may not be quite what we thought, but it's going to work out great.
Yes. So, I mean, that's always, to me, I'm always trying to find fun hacks for helping people lean into their the trust that it's going to be okay. And I'm wondering, I mean, maybe just shifting into how good can it get, and just shifting the thought, or because when people go ahead.
Well, you mentioned faith too, and that
Mhm.
one, whenever I get to something like that, like, I don't know how to increase my faith. Well, you can always, if you're spiritual, then you can turn to God, like, God, please increase my
Right.
faith. That's
Right.
always a good one.
Right.
And if you're an atheist and don't believe in God, that's okay. Just go to
Yeah.
zero entropy and say, just ask zero entropy, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a lot of people believe in nature as their, sort of higher space, like when they're out in nature, that's their church or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
That's
So
great.
whatever that ultimate belief is, some people say, I don't believe in anything. I'm just in a body, I die.
Mhm.
But then what I'm doing is hoping to engage them, if they can at least go to this idea of something exists that is eternal and infinite. There is something that was here. There's something before all of this that we see here.
Right.
Whatever you want to call that.
Right. Right. I mean, there are people, people who believe that their consciousness is a byproduct of chemical interactions in the brain only, you know,
Right.
I mean, that's
Right.
an experience, but they're probably not gonna have any interest in becoming intentional creators of their reality.
It's going to be a challenge. Let's put it that way.
I can't think of anything less fun.
So if people have any shreds of that, but some people pick up pieces of that thought pattern without knowing that they did that.
Yeah.
And so if we're talking about it now, we're laughing. But if they feel like, oh my gosh, that's me, I've got some of this. Oh my gosh, that's what's wrong. But you can clear that too. You can just start recognizing, what if there's something more, you know.
Oh my gosh, it is so much fun. I mean, it's pretty personal, but would you be willing to talk about what some of the thoughts are that you have in terms of how good can it get? Or do you just say how good, you just say how good can it get and just get into a vibration there, right?
It has to be a feeling for me. And I
Yeah.
have to really need it. And I
Mhm.
do need it. I've needed that since I got to this planet. I thought, what the heck? You know, it's like,
Is
place
this your
needs-
first, is this your first Earth go round?
No, but I
But
remember,
still.
yeah, I remember a dystopian future, like 500 years from now. And then in between, I was just hanging out with, you know, Source, the angels, you know, I was hanging out in heaven. It was kicking, loving it. And then somehow I got tossed in here, what I thought it was a little early, because I still felt like not done recovering from the dystopian nightmare future that I just came back from. But anyway.
Okay, so then you need it at times. And so when you tap into how good can it get, do you allow your imagination to play in, you know, letting imagery or sensation or?
Not really. It's not the way most people do. It's more of a feeling thing. My true self is more vibration. I go into that state when I'm just hanging out, kicking it with it, you know, the angels.
Source.
Yeah. So I'm in that vibe. And
That's a good vibe.
That's what I'm bringing through.
That's some powerful stuff. Do you find, you know, in terms of your being, has it historically been hard for you to ground?
Well, it has been challenging at times. Yeah. So I tend to I walk barefoot most all the time, and I hug trees, and I lie down on the ground, you know, and do the best I can to make friends with my body. Because you're right. It's like historic. Like if I just remember, where did I come from? Who am I? Well, I know that I'm not my body. So
when we're in those vibrations, it's really easy to not be in our body. And that can also be, just be kind of stumbly.
Yeah. So I like doing things like martial arts. That's really good for grounding. Yoga.
Yeah.
Gardening, you know, those are all good for me.
Oh yeah. And I'm feeling compelled to ask, because I get the feeling that people really need to hear these things right now. You know, yes. I do really, with my whole heart, feel that there's a deepening of humanity into what you're talking about and what we're talking about. And many are brand new to the game, brand new. And it's like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a client who's kind of new to the game, and like, where I'll say, okay, and bring your awareness into your body and take a nice deep breath, just noticing as your chest expands, and the response is like, huh?
Right.
And that's not that often, but it has happened. And I guess I want to make it really inviting for people to trust that the water is nice. Come on in, like, you know, stick a toe in, and trust that there is more going on, and that you have a powerful part to play in that.
Absolutely. And it makes it fun too, to play with placebo effects. So the stuff I was talking about, like get more sleep, space out the meals, a few supplements, when you take those, then you can just imagine, and now my body's going to be rejuvenated fully and completely. You know, this will be like the fountain of youth. I'm going to be coming into this fabulous, rejuvenated body that's going to be better than ever. I mean,
love that.
You can really take this, how good can it get, and just juice up whatever you're doing. If you're in a relationship, it can be better than it's ever been.
Yeah, in every realm of your life.
Every realm.
Yeah, I think those are good exercises for people like me who I'm not always in that vibration. I'm still sort of in the human ranges often. And I am playing with, well, what does that feel like? Ooh, and I want to go here and imagine what that looks like. And what, ooh, that's like a nice beach, and feeling the, the sand, the warm sand beneath, between my toes, or looking up at the clouds and watching them wisp by, or whatever it is, but playing in that space. So you're talking about the level of higher realms where it's just like, I would say, bliss state. Do you see colors?
Yeah, it looks like pastels, and some of the colors are colors that we don't have here. It
Yeah.
must be the other end of the spectrum or something, because and even within the spectrum, there are colors that people that I can see, and I think other people see them too, and they're like so much richer, like really vivid, vibrant. What I mean.
I'm a color seer as well. And as a kid,
Yeah.
I just, I would just like drop into colors like, I love you, green. Well, they thought I was weird, but I was just doing it all perfect. Yeah, well, I'm seeing this really strong blue aura around you. It's just blasting. And so I'm just saying that because if other people are watching and they're seeing that, it's not it's not a trick of the camera. It's just Cynthia. She's blasting her blue ray.
Yeah, it's blue
Yeah.
sky. Anything's possible. It's like the optimism.
Yeah. So cool. I mean, we could go riff on this forever and ever, but I think this is a really good point to just start sort of closing it up. And
Yeah.
what is your, maybe closing it up with, what is it that you would like to see happen in this next year? If that comes to you.
Yeah, I'd like to see people recognize that they can be respectful of people with different opinions, and recognize that when information seems like it's true, maybe that's true from one vantage point, and people might not be as evil as we might feel compelled to think they are. So just kind of like take a step back, and when things seem just all messed up, just calm down, stay calm, recognize, number one, we can respect everyone, and there by the grace of God go I. That could be us over there in exactly that viewpoint they're coming from. That could be, I'm talking about family, friends, neighbors, colleagues, coworkers, and then in the news, if people are watching the news, all of it. So I would love to see that. I would love to see people treat each other with respect, with honesty, with integrity.
Right. I can really feel into that too. I was just telling my kids on the way to school, like, pay attention to the stuff that is unifying in its message. There's a lot of stuff of division, but us humans are not all that different. I mean, we in this time, we want to be taught to believe or shown the division. And it's like, I'm suspect of that, because I know all humans want safety and happiness and shelter, and to have a good night's sleep, and have yummy food, and be loved and appreciated, and a warm, safe, economically stable life. That's everyone.
And I'd like people to know if they feel frightened or anxious, that there are techniques and ways to calm that down, to attain that state of higher level awareness, even if it's something as simple as write about yourself in third person. Just write just a paragraph about what's going on for you, but write it with your name, like Cynthia today had a great time talking with Nora. Cynthia did some gardening, because what happens then is it's hard to stay in that panic and that anxiety. You automatically get lifted right out of it.
I'm gonna put that tool in my tool belt. And there are resources. Check YouTube. There's a ton of things on YouTube. And if you
Oh,
want to
gosh.
work with people one-on-one, you
Right.
got two people right here. So, well, I love you so much. I am so
Love you
happy
too.
that we got a chance to connect, and we'll check in. Maybe one of these days we'll like intend to do some sort of Mandela effect change and see how it plays out. We'll do some sort of experiment. That might be
Sounds
fun.
awesome. Love it.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks so
thank you
much.
so much for coming on the show,
You.
and thank you for tuning in, everybody. And we'll be back. We'll be back next time. So just stay tuned and keep the love flowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
How good can it get with that love?
How good can it get?
Mm.
All right. Until next time, take care.